Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, or good morning. Uh, this is officially my creative output that I wanted to do for on social media, a more lengthier presentation. To give you some perspective, I tried doing live streaming myself on such platforms as Twitch and even here on YouTube, and I was just getting frame rate drops like crazy. So I said to myself, okay, step back for a second. Why not record what you're watching, do it the way you want it, you can do it, and just get it out there and let the people decide. And hopefully you wish for the best and capture an audience. And that is essentially what I'm doing right now. As I'm recording this is going to be totally unedited, real time. I just don't have a lot of free time in my schedule to do like a real good editing video. Maybe in the near future I might. But we will see and cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, I just wanted to get everything that I wanted to do creatively out of my system, put it out there, get it done. And that's what I'm doing today. And what am I doing today? Well, I'm going to be reacting and giving you my thoughts on some videos that I saved into a personal playlist of mine. But before I do that, I want to state for the record, first of all, that no copyright infringement is intended. All videos that I am viewing here are widely available on YouTube. So YouTube, if you find that these videos need to be deleted, they need to be deleted. But I will enjoy them until otherwise. Another thing is, you will see this for the brief time that I'm recording this. Ads will play because I don't have YouTube Premium yet. But I want to say that to any advertiser who has their ads playing on this video, or you have your advertisements that play during my content, and it just doesn't sit well with you, I apologize in advance. And you can do what you have to do to have your ads removed from my videos. Another thing is, yes, I am really recording basically from my internal webcam that's built into my laptop. I don't have a high-end PC. I don't have anything. I don't have a microphone. I don't have, nice lighting. I just have the light in the back in my kitchen in my apartment. But eventually there will be upgrades. Yeah, and this content's going to get looking better. But there's a first time for everything, and even when it's your first time, you just got to go with the flow and just make it happen. If you don't put your best foot forward, period, or do it at all, you're just stalling, in my opinion. So, with all that out of the way and all said and done, here's what we are going to be reacting to today. So, I have here on my YouTube channel, I put together a YouTube playlist called 2001 A Year of Wrestling Change, which is very, very true. I'm a big, huge pro wrestling fan. So 2001 was a big year if you're a pro wrestling fan. And what happened was, to give you some perspective, the WWF, now known as WWE, was on top of the heap, and their top competitors, WCW and ECW, were going out of business. They eventually got bought out by the WWE, again known as WWF at the time, and yeah, the whole wrestling landscape changed. So because I knew that was an important year, I decided to find as many tips from YouTube content creators that I follow and enjoy. And yeah, as you can see, I got tons saved up here. And this is going to be a lot of fun if you're a pro wrestling fan like me. And then I got stuff from basically the odd channels here and there, other channels. I've got clips from podcasts, other videos on other stuff that was happening in 2001. So yeah, we are gonna enjoy this till we're done and we reach the bottom. There's in total 168 videos and possibly counting because you never know. I could find something else. I could find something more. So yeah. So yeah, this is the whole thing. But I have it set to private for now because I want you guys to be surprised as surprised as I am. Because some of this stuff I'm looking at, and I'd be like, oh, I uploaded that. Oh, I can't wait to look at that and what have you, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and that's where we reach it. So yeah, so start off at least in this upload today. We're just gonna watch two videos from one of my favorite YouTube wrestling channels, Wrestling with Regret. It's the channel a guy by the name of Brian Zane, who actually has experience in the pro wrestling world, and he's also a big pro wrestling fan. So these are his reviews of ECW Guilty as Charged 2001 and WCW Sin 2001. Both took place in the month of January. So I will periodically pause the videos to give some my thoughts, but yeah, I'm just here to enjoy the ride, as are you. So, no ifs, ands, or buts. Let's quit stalling, and ads if they show up, whatever. But let's go. Oh, I clicked on I clicked on the YouTube channel, not my playlist. All right. Yeah, play all. Go over here. Duh. Here we go. And I was watching some Striper
This is not a
video.
stand mixer. It's how the Harpers turn downtime into together time.
Now you don't know.
And this is not just any loyalty program.
Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with another classic pay-per-view review as nominated by my Patreon backers. This week we're going to the land of extreme for the last hurrah of ECW as we knew it at the time. Final pay-per-view ever of the original ECW, but by no means did they treat it as such. This was no, oh, let's look back at all the fond memories, one last hurrah, gang, we're going to go out and blaze of glory. None of that, because as far as everyone knew, even though the writing was on the wall, it was business as usual in ECW, and that's important. Note that the writing is on the wall because at this point ECW had been without TV for about 3 months. They were taken off of TNN about 3 months before this after Paul Heyman challenged TNN to take him off the air, and then they called his bluff. So yeah, there's been no TV, there's been no touring, so really all of their storyline advancement and all of their shows have basically been relying on pay-per-views. So yeah,
Yep.
kind of a shaky situation, and I'll get into what happens more, the downfall of ECW at the end of this review. Interesting and worth noting, at least this is mentioned on Wikipedia in the write-up for this show, Scott Hall was advertised originally to be on this show, but then they withdrew advertising about that, so who really knows what happened. And speaking of the extreme stuff,
Man, knowing that, that would have been so cool if the late Scott Hall was there. The place would have erupted. And they're in the Hammerstein Ballroom, which is prime ECW like territory. Like the crowd there loved ECW, the original ECW, and oh man, the roof would have gone off the place. Actually, Scott Hall did make a few appearances in ECW in like the late 2000, and there's like fan cam footage of it on the internet. There's even an actual stream of it where you can find it, and I'll go into that more as this goes on. But yeah, that would have been something.
if you notice this little red mark on my finger, this is not blood. I'm not gigging for this show on ECW. I just spilled a little bit of printer's ink when I was changing cartridges today. That's why I've got a red tip on my finger. The show begins with the longest hype package of all time, or at least it feels that way. It's just 5 minutes of non-stop like highlight reel with no dialogue, no narration, no text, nothing contextual about it or anything. Apparently in the original broadcast, the original version of the show, the song that is playing underneath all this is Renegades of Funk by Rage Against the Machine. The idea that Rage would license any of their music out, to me, is laughable. But the
Yeah.
thing is, of course, it's the network version I'm watching, so you get this generic music underneath. That is not the last time you'll be hearing me complain about the network dubbing on this show. It is pretty damn persistent.
Yeah, he's not wrong. I grew up with the original ECW, and authentically, what occurred in the original ECW that made it unique was that wrestlers would come out to, copyrighted music, but still what was popular at the time. And it just fit the bill of what was going on here. But yeah, when you watch these on the WWE network and you know it's edited, it's not authentic. So, in all honesty, if you want a non WWE Network dubbed version of the ECW experience, your best bet, including the aforementioned footage of Scott Hall, if you want to see any of that, there is actually a site. It's called highspotswrestling.com. They have DVDs of every single house show, pay-per-view, TV taping that ECW did that is unedited. It's in its original form. But they also have a streaming service called High Spots Network, and they've uploaded all of the at least all the house shows and all the TV tapings under ECW, and again, all unedited, all original. So if you want the authentic experience, that's where you go. highspotswrestling.com, or download High Spots Wrestling's network. And to be honest, they're not paying me to say that, but I once talked with them quite a while back, and I asked them, I'm an original ECW fan. Is there any chance I can make mention that you guys have the unedited versions? And they said, man, go right ahead, spread the word. So I'm spreading the word here for you guys. So if you want the authentic experience, go check highspotsnetwork.com to order the videos. Or, you know what? Go to their streaming service and watch them all to your heart's content. But with that out of the way, let's continue.
2,500 people packed the Hammerstein Ballroom as the show officially opens with Joey Styles and Joel Gertner in the ring. And I think that Gertner alone is why this video on the network gets the TVMA rating.
Another pay-per-view here in New York City. And with her face on my nuts, even that girl would look pretty.
Gertner introduces Joey Matthews and Christian York to the ring. It's crazy to think that Matthews, who of course would go on to become Joey Mercury, crazy to think that he was part of the original ECW at the very end. He was very young when he got in the business and got his first break in ECW. It's very similar to me when AJ Styles would wrestle for WCW at the tail end of that company's existence when it was about to die. Joey Mercury in ECW is very much the same way. As they're making their way out to the ring, the Baldies jump the two of them and beat them up a lot. And then as that's happening, Joel Gertner, who I believe was managing these two at the time, tries to step up and defend them, but he gets beaten up as well. Cyrus, the former network representative, of course that's Don Callis today, but when he first debuted for ECW, Cyrus the Virus was representing TNN, in kayfabe and everything, so he was a network guy. But with no network deal, what was the justification for keeping him on? He had done his job. The network won, essentially, so he was doing color commentary at this point in time, as well as in this show. He shows up alongside Jerry Lynn. Cyrus has paid off the Baldies to do their dirty work, and all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, are we having a match now? Because Cyrus gets in the corner on the apron, and then Jerry Lynn hits Matthews with the cradle pile driver, tags in Cyrus, who just quickly pins Matthews, and just as this is happening, Joey Styles' mic finally turns on just to call the pinfall. So this was a match. Apparently, there was a crooked referee there. It was with Cyrus and Jerry Lynn, so Yeah, okay, well, this is a match I give it 1/2 star because it was not much of a match. And then the music plays, and then you can't make out what the audience is doing because this is the thing, the music and the network dubbing is going to be a constant issue with this show because when they play the generic music over the licensed music that they had in the original ECW, they also mask the original crowd noise. They can't get the original crowd noise because it mixes too much with the actual music, so you get this kind of like cheaply added crowd noise patched in, and it doesn't capture the authentic sound of what those reactions were like. You would think that within the massive video library that WWE possesses, they'd be able to splice in some kind of similar crowd reaction of booing or cheering or something to match what's going on. But when they play that generic music, you just lose all of that crowd emotion and reaction. This happens pretty much like the whole show on the network. Basically, if you want to get the real experience of an ECW show, the best thing you can do is try and find the original VHS or DVD. Do not watch the network for that because you will miss out on a lot of the experience. It is very frustrating, though I tried to not let that affect my experience of watching it for the purpose of this review. Matthews is bleeding profusely on the outside of the ring as Cyrus gives the Baldy some cigars. Lynn cutting a promo saying he's no longer a jobber. It's his time now. He's the whole fucking show, and he demands to be in the main event exclusively from here on out in ECW. Well, you'll get that wish, but only once, unfortunately. A big RVD chant in the crowd, and Lynn says, RVD's not coming. He's not the big surprise. And obviously, since they're telegraphing that he's not the surprise, obviously, he will be showing up. But yes, RVD was kind of not really part of the ECW scene for the last several months because he wasn't getting paid. That is a common occurrence you have probably heard about a lot at the tail end of ECW. So RVD was not really part of the show, and they were advertising a big surprise is going to be happening on this show, and pretty much everyone and their mother knew it was going to be RVD, but they tried their best to say otherwise here. Then after all that, Jerry ends his promo in a very peculiar way.
Because I am Jerry Lynn!
He did this like low metal scream for his last name in the promo, and immediately when I heard that, I flashed back to Judgment Day 2001 when he was the light heavyweight champion in the WWF, and he was there doing a live shot from WWF New York, and he was cutting a promo, and he wraps it up by doing the exact same thing where he goes,
if I was there, I'd give a whole new meaning to the words Judgment Day.
I'm like,
I'm not gonna judge. That's metal as fuck. And I'm a metalhead. And a pro wrestling fan, so I get two things in one. I ain't gonna judge.
whoa, that was weird enough then. And then when I hear this promo for the very first time, I'm like, oh my God, was this his thing? Was that how he just wrapped up promos, doing like this low scream on the last syllable of his promos? Did that get over? Like, was that his thing and people like resonated with it? No, that's insane. If you did that today, you look like a goof. Who would do that? Why would that get over? That's a terrible thing to do in your promos. You sound nuts. So after all that, after 5 minutes of highlight reel, after Joey Styles and Joel Gertner, after this big beatdown on Matthews in York and Cyrus coming in to make the pinfall, Jerry Lynn's promo, go Jerry Lynn, then we finally get the ECW intro with the traditional ECW theme and that whole damn song. That's a very long sequence. People think my intro is self-indulgent and long on my Thursday videos. No. ECW is the definition of indulgence, which now I think about it is a really awesome nickname for a wrestler. Somebody take that. The first real match of the evening is for the ECW Tag Team titles as Danny Doring and the Amish Roadkill defend against Hot Commodity, the team of Julio De Niro and Easy Money. Of course, Easy Money is a noted tights maker. He has a website where he makes tights for people. He's clearly showing off his skill as a tailor with this ridiculous outfit. Also, Julio De Niro, of course, is the former Julio Fantastico who made his pay-per-view debut at Heroes of Wrestling at Casino Magic in 1999. I think ECW is a step up for him, for that Julio. They're a company.
For perspective, Heroes of Wrestling 1999 is considered one of the worst wrestling pay-per-views of all time. And yes, I have it saved in a playlist somewhere. I even have his review that he did to balance it out. Yeah, I agree with him. That it's a step up. It's a step up. Financially, might have not got paid. But step up nonetheless.
Accompanied by Chris Hamrick and Elektra. I had to do some research on who these two people were. Hamrick is a longtime indie wrestler who started working for ECW in 2000. Even though he started wrestling in the mid-80s, he would wind up appearing in Wrestling Society X in their pilot episode. He was in TNA under a mask as Crimson Dragon. Even showed up as a jobber in the WWF in the mid-90s, and then later, years later, as a fake Triple H in a skit with Booker T when he was King Booker. Elektra, trained by the fabulous Moolah and Johnny Rods, she debuted as the valet for Dorian Roadkill, but then turned on that, and she debuted in late 99, but turned on Dorian Roadkill at Living Dangerously 2000. So she's been kind of a thorn in their side for a very long time up to this point, almost a whole year. And of course, the crowd chanting, "She's a crack whore" for Elektra. This is the stuff that, this is the original ECW, folks, condensed right here on this show. I think I brought this up in my review for ECW Barely Legal about how, like, in ECW, like, every wrestler had every move named after them in some kind of way or some kind of pun. Danny Doring is no exception. Literally all of his moves are named after something dirty. There's the panty drop elbow, the G-spot sweet, the bareback, like everything is some kind of innuendo. By the way, this match is actually really fun to watch. It's very high spotty. It's pretty much just all high spots, high spots, high spots. One of my favorites is kind of a subtle one, but I think it's very impressive athletic ability.
Nice.
Easy Money is on the outside, whipped into the barricade. He counters, but is jumping on the top of the barricade and doing a landing onto Roadkill on the other side. Very impressive. The hot tag sees Roadkill and Easy Money getting tagged in. Roadkill with a big old hot tag, including the biggest wedgie of all time, like cartoon level, brought to life in human form with how much he was pulling back that G-string. It was insane. Elektra distracts Roadkill. De Niro hits the jalapeno popper, although he actually kind of whiffs it as the camera does catch it, kind of a bad angle, and the crowd catches it too with the "you fucked up" chant. Not the only time we'll be hearing that chant on this evening. Hammer gets back in the ring, accidentally hits Money, and then again, when he gets hit to the outside, a boogie bag to Disulio, a double team move there, and the champions retain. I'm going to give this match 2.5 stars. It is a spotty spot fest by both these teams, but it is very exciting to watch. As someone who is pretty unfamiliar with a lot of ECW stuff, especially the last year and a half or so, I don't know how often these guys wrestled each other, but I do know I've seen like some stuff from Danny Dorian Roadkill in the past, and this match was, it was fun to watch. After the match, the heels are beating down the faces. Then Nova, the future Simon Dean, comes out to make the save with the worst dubbed theme of all time. I don't even know what his original theme was, but it had to have been better than what the hell they were playing here.
Whose music is that?
And
See what I mean? Dub version is no good. And I believe Nova came out to something by the Prodigy, though Al Snow also came out to something by the Prodigy. But still, see what I mean? Better off going to iSpots.com.
apparently we have a match right now as Nova goes one-on-one with Confederate Currency Chris Hamrick. I guess both tag teams in the earlier matches went back to the curtain, looked at the monitor, saw they were wrestling, our guys are back there having a match. Should we go out and do something? No, let's let them do their thing. So this is Nova's big return to ECW. He took some time off, and now he's kind of rebranded as his new character. Joey Styles is really putting the character change over, saying he's not going to be anyone's stepping stone. He's not going to be anyone's victim. He's not the goofy guy he was in the Blue World Order. He's definitely a lot more serious now. I'm curious to know what brought on this character change. So he's having to deal with Elektra constantly distracting him in this matchup. Oh, look, she sticks her tongue out. What a heel. What a Jezebel. I have no idea. I've never seen Chris Hamrick's work before this. I don't know who he is, but he's pretty good in this match. I love his giant top rope Hurricane Rana in the middle of the match. Although I do love the spot where he's on the apron going to clothesline Nova, but Nova ducks. And he takes the longest time to go, where did Nova go? Which way did he go? Finally, where he turns around and gets hit by Nova. And now here's where things totally go off the rails, because Elektra gets in the ring. Nova kicks her in the arm. She sells it like it was broken. Nova has the cross-faced chicken wing on Hamrick, and he's down on his back at the same time. The referee is down. Chris Chetty, who was teaming with Nova for a long time, but then they had a bitter breakup, and actually Nova beat Chetty in a loser leaves ECW match not that long ago. Didn't take long for him to come back here. He comes in wearing a referee's shirt. He does a fast count on Nova's shoulders while the other referee gets up and calls for the submission. So we have this confusing finish, supposedly. And so now, as that's happening, in comes not Polly dangerously, but Louis dangerously. Sign Guy Dudley has changed gimmicks, and I guess he's just filling in for Heyman because he's been a ghost in ECW the last couple of months. He decks the legit referee with his giant phone, and then for some reason, Spike Dudley just comes in, apropos of nothing, to badly dubbed music that sounds vaguely like Highway to Hell. So the former Sign Guy begins cutting a promo, but barely gets the words out before Chetty starts beating up Nova and Spike some more. Spike does hit the acid drop onto Chetty off of Louis dangerously. He climbs up him as he's going up there, which is pretty impressive. Nova hits Hamrick with the Kryptonite Crunch to win, because like Spike is like counting the 3 and the other referees getting up saying, oh, okay, you got it, I'm gonna ring the bell for you. What the hell, was the match still going on? Like, I thought we had the dirty count at the end with Chetty, but no, the match is apparently still going on.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm gonna give this match 1.5 stars. It's probably the best one I can give it. It had a lot of like good moments, and then the finishes was totally balls to the wall insane. The overbooking of this whole thing, because if you think about from the beginning what you had the ECW tag title match with Hot Commodity versus Dorian Roadkill that bled into Nova coming out, wrestling Hamrick, Elektra's still there interfering. Then you get Chris Chetty, Louis Dangerously, and Spike Dudley all thrown into this weird-ass gumbo, and then we end with Nova winning this match that was impromptu. That really took away from a lot that was going on just in this match alone. But I am impressed from seeing Nova, and I am impressed from seeing Hamrick. Again, as someone who's never seen Hamrick's work, really, I was very impressed. After a killer promo by ECW champion Steve Corino, who does a pretty good job retelling his whole story arc since arriving in ECW back in '99, we then go to an I Quit match between Tommy Dreamer and CW Anderson. Dreamer is like the de facto head of the company in the wake of Heyman's absence, because Heyman is like pretty much gone for a while. He's like looking for TV deals. He's like, he knows that bankruptcy is coming. Again, I'll get to the details of that in a little bit later on, but no, Dreamer is the one kind of running the ship at this point. It's a young versus old rivalry here in this match, culminating in this I Quit match. My favorite part in the beginning is when the ring announcer is doing the introductions, and then Anderson and Dreamer just lock up and start fighting, and the ring announcer tries to get Dreamer's name out. It's like, the Innovator of Violence! Yeah, good New York! They're not gonna wait! The Innovator of Violence!
And I've actually seen this, I actually own this match on compilations. I think several compilations that I have based on ECW, and this is definitely a match that sticks out in a good way. So even in this condensed review version, you'll see what I mean.
You can tell this match is going to be pure hardcore madness as Dreamer suplexes CW on the floor in the first 90 seconds or so. They're trading submissions back and forth for about a minute in the ring before we go back to the outside. Dreamer bracing CW's arm between a chair and the turnbuckle post, hits it with another chair. He blasts the ring bell right up against CW's head. That was pretty hard. I wouldn't have taken that. I would have wanted to take that. CW with a drop toe hold onto the edge of the chair in the ring. That looked brutal, and Dreamer is bleeding profusely, as he is wont to do. He literally sacrificed like all the blood and sweat and tears for ECW. Dreamer is able to recover. He opens up a Christmas present in January and reveals a length of razor wire. At that point, CW Anderson starts beating up Towel Boy. I look up who Towel Boy was. Apparently, he was a kid on the ring crew who developed kind of a cult following, because in between all the matches we need to wipe down the ropes and wipe the blood off the mats and stuff, the fans would start cheering for him. So he got kind of over just by doing his job. He was part of the ring crew and cleaning up the ring and stuff. So in December, at their previous pay-per-view, he was involved in an altercation with CW Anderson in that match with Tommy Dreamer then, the Massacre on 34th Street pay-per-view. CW hits a hanging superplex to the Towel Boy. That was kind of a ridiculous spot there. Anderson brings out a table and puts it in the ring. They go to the top rope, and Dreamer catches him, hits him with the Spicoli driver, the Death Valley driver, through the table. Then Dreamer uses the plastic liner around the table and pulls it across CW's eyes to get CW to say he quits. Dreamer wins. I'm going to give this match 3 stars. This was a very good hardcore match. Certainly a lot of innovation when using the weapons that they used in this match. Towel Boy was an interesting interlude. I looked him up and realized he's still, if he's not currently wrestling, he was wrestling for a very long time. He's only a couple of years older than I am, but he has wrestled for like Ring of Honor and CZW and stuff like that in the years since ECW went under. So that was kind of a nice little entry point for him. His foot in the door, basically, was being a ring crew guy for ECW, getting over for cleaning the ring, and then he gets a gig as a wrestler. So you can't really.
So I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I made
Really?
$49,000 in the last 30 days copying and pasting.
No.
Let me beat that. So up next is the wildest promo of the night. We go backstage to see Francine trying to fit a whole salami sub sandwich in her mouth. Get it? Oral sex. Steve Corino walks in and they have a chat where he kind of doubles down on the double entendre. He wants to know where Justin Credible is, and he's with Missy Hyatt, and Corino says, oh, bullshit. And he walks off, and out comes Justin Credible out of the bathroom with Missy Hyatt. How neither party hurt each other in this exchange. I don't know, the locker room's only like 10 feet by 10 feet. How did you not hear each other? They walk out. So apparently Credible and Francine had this agreement where, Francine's not going to give any of this to Justin Credible if as long as he doesn't have the gold. Credible was a former world champion, but now he's not. So a lot is at stake for Justin here. And then the whole promo ends when Corino and Jack Victory are stunned that Missy is actually there, and then Jack Victory actually makes a reference to when Missy managed him several years ago.
That's why we got the title for only 1 week, because of you!
And then the promo ends with Corino and Victory breaking the fourth wall and saying, hi Spot, we stole the promo again. Like, okay man, you do you. I'm sure that is a hysterical line for you. I don't get the reference, but yeah, from beginning to end, this whole promo was just like, wow, this is very risque. It's crazy, like, because I'm so used to watching WWE and the PG product today. Like, going back to this time period is like, it's cool, but at the same time it's like, whoa, here's all this stuff you would never see today. We then get a three-way dance for the #1 contendership for the tag team championships as the FBI, Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke, take on the unholy alliance of Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck, the man who convinced a whole generation of wrestlers that it was okay to dress like that.
Say what you will about his attire at this time, but Mike Whipwreck is really inspirational, in my opinion. Being that, like, dude has an interesting story. He was on the ring crew in ECW, and then eventually he asked Paul Heyman, can I get trained? So they trained him to be basically a jobber, which is wrestle speak for a guy who's paid to lose, But he got over, he got better, he was a ECW heavyweight champion at one time, and, he eventually trained guys. And he's retired now, but still, he worked his way up. He paid his dues. So, despite this attire, Mike Whipwreck is pretty cool, in my book. And this match has a lot of pretty cool stuff in it, too.
Taking on Kid Cash and Super Crazy. There's a big "you fucked up" chant early in the match after Kid Cash, fucks up when he's doing a spot with Mikey Whipwreck. We do briefly revisit the classic bout between Tajiri and Super Crazy. That whole feud between those two really put the two on the map in America. You thank ECW for that happening. Very fast-paced match where everyone's getting their shit in. At one point, all 6 men are in the ring. Everyone's submission now! And credit to Kid Cash, by the way, in this match, because he's bouncing all over the place while he's there. As friend of the show, Sin Min distracts the referee. Big man Sal Graziano from the FBI does a splash on the Kid Cash. That must not have felt good. Mamaluke covers, and Cash and Crazy are eliminated. We are down to the final 2 teams. Tajiri and Whipwreck each drop their opponent's face first into some chairs in the corner. That's how you do that spot. You don't do it on the edge on the back like Tommy Dreamer did. Take it from these guys.
Pardon me, if you saw that reaction just there, I didn't zap myself. I actually have a pet cat. He's camera shy. He's been having a bad biting issue. You stop that, you.
Whipwreck, the former ECW champion, is on the corner trying to fight off both of his opponents. He tries to do a double whippersnapper, but the FBI blocks it and turns into a double Fujiwara armbar. Tajiri does make the save with the green mist into Mamaluke's eyes. Double dragon suplex onto the FBI.
Tiger suplex.
And Whipwreck. The Unholy Alliance win the day, but unfortunately will not be able to challenge for those tag titles anytime soon. I give this match 2.5 stars out of 4. I enjoy the pacing in this matchup as it goes from fast-paced and frenetic at the beginning with all 3 teams down to a slower, more methodical pace, more hard-hitting pace with the 2 teams that are left, the Unholy Alliance and the FBI. And this is more of an emblematic thing with all of ECW, but it especially kind of like glared at me in this match. Just kind of an overall lack of psychology, just like big spot, big spot, big spot. I felt that there was slightly more storytelling and slightly more of a dramatic tale being told, even in the tag title match from earlier. I think this is a match coming up because there are 2 little dots on the network timeline that tell you that, and there's a basic structure here that it makes it look like a match, but we'll see what I mean in a second. It's Johnny Swinger and Simon Diamond with Dawn Marie starting out in the ring. Swinger says that Diamond has been hogging Dawn Marie in bed, so he's leaving Dawn Marie's specific management, and is going to be, even though he's still teaming with Simon Diamond and who's still with Dawn Marie, he's going to bring on his own management of Blue Boy Management, which is an obvious ripoff on Bad Boy Management, which is run by Sean Combs. Out comes the Blue Meanie, or the Blue Boys he's called here, and wow, look at the Blue Meanie here. He has shed a whole bunch of weight. He would gain it all back later, but just this weird, miraculous moment here where Blue Meanie got really trimmed down and really cut. He was dating porn star Jasmine St. Clair somehow, and so, but my whole thought when they were first coming out, and Swinger was like, I'm signing on with Blue Boy Management because I'm not getting enough sex from Dawn Marie. I'm like, so you're going to get sex from Blue Meanie? No, you're going to have sex with Jasmine St. Clair, apparently. Anyway,
Well, I'm going to say this right now. Get this out of the way. Two things. At this time, Blue Meanie, who is known for being a rather rotund individual, and he doesn't hide it. He lives life the way he wants to. Man, he lost a lot of weight. Really, he looked good. He looked great at this time. So, but the fact that he's still around, I mean, yeah, he's still rotund, but hey, he's still pretty cool. And if you're wondering yes, she's a porn star, but if you're wondering what her claim to fame is, Jasmine St. Clair, she was big in the 90s. And her claim to fame was her and 300 guys in one day. And that's all I'm going to say. That led to her getting on Springer, which led to Paul Heyman giving her a call, and she got involved in the wrestling business. It was in ECW. Some people liked her, some people didn't, but nonetheless, hey, she made a name for herself. And I do have saved, there's an interview with her on a adult entertainment based Safe for Work podcast where she talks about her claim to fame and all that. And I'm pretty sure she might touch on her wrestling industry. And I think she owned a wrestling company at one point. I think it was 3PW. I could be wrong. I don't want to dwell on too much. But yeah, she was involved in the wrestling business for quite some time. She could take a bump, in my opinion. You'll see her in a second. I'll give her that.
Two are ostensibly taking on Balls Mahoney and Chili Willy. That was kind of an insane setup to that. The match pretty much starts from like a giant high spot right at the beginning. A problem solver onto Chili Willy by Swinger and Diamond. Meanie gets into the ring for no reason. Why would he get in there? His guys are winning. He gets hit in the head with a chair by Balls Mahoney. Out comes Rhino, the television champion, the hired gun of the network. He gores everybody. He gores Dawn Marie. He gores Chili Willy. He gores Blue Meanie. And he gives a pile driver to Jasmine St. Clair off the ropes, which is always an insane looking spot, and it just ends. There's a pile of bodies and Rhino walks away. I give this one a half star because very much like in the opening match that we had, wasn't much of a match, and this one didn't have a finish. A triple threat ladder match with the ECW Championship up next as the King of Old School, Steve Corino, defends his title against the Sandman and Just Incredible. If you want to not be hyped up about the Sandman, then just watch one of his matches on the network because apparently can't show his entrance worth a damn. Like, they just don't have the entrances at all in this match appearance. Like halfway through Sandman's thing, and then the match officially begins. Some backstory to this.
So when the Sandman would come out, when he was in the ECW, he would come out in the crowd. He'd have his cigarette, his beer, he'd have a kendo stick, and he'd be coming out to the song Metallica's Enter Sandman. And I remember seeing this, it's fan cam footage of a taping they did for their TV show when they were on TNN, which became Spike TV, which became Paramount Network, and that's a whole different story for another day. But yeah, he's coming out. The crowd is just singing in unison, and it's just one of those moments where you're like, wow, like listen to that reaction. And I mean, Sandman wrestled drunk half the time, but still, the fact that you got to see the Sandman come out and got to sing Enter Sandman top to bottom, and it played as he was doing his thing, that was pretty cool. He was one of only two wrestlers in ECW that got to do that. The other guy was the late New Jack. He would come out to Natural Born Killers by Ice Cube and Dr. Dre. And I mean, when he came out, the wrestlers were shitting their bricks. I didn't know what to expect with him. But yeah, I got an interview. Well, there's an interview where he talks about his career on a YouTube channel here that I have it saved somewhere. I know I do. So I'm gonna react and watch that in due time.
Credible is a former ECW champion, but he lost the title to Carino back in November. But then about a month or so prior to this show, Carino had the physical belt stolen from him by the Sandman. And so now the belt's being suspended above the ring, and these three are going to be wrestling for it. Coincidentally, it was a triple threat match between these three guys that allowed Carino to win the title from Credible in the first place. So kind of tying back to that. This match is basically how many times can we have Sandman fall off the ladder? That was essentially all there is in this match. Carino hits Sandman with a cane to knock him off the ladder. The ladder tips over, bonking Carino in the head on accident. I feel worse for the unplanned ladder contact like that than I do for the planned ladder spots. Credible tosses Sandman to the outside and through a table and some chairs on top of the table. Like, how many weird ways can we get Sandman to get totally fucked up and throw him through all these different things? He does get some time to shine after this, though. He suplexes Carino into a leaning ladder, throws Credible to the outside and through another table. Sandman tries climbing the ladder super fast, but these are not your sturdy ladders you see in WWE today. These are like, you know, janky, wobbly ladders. He just climbs up right away, and like he falls over. He falls off and lands on the ladder and breaks it. You just see it bend in half. Credible is obviously planning for something because he's on the top rope, but he didn't get to do it, which that was hilarious. Later, Carino and Credible dump Sandman off the ladder to the outside through a table. Big shock. It looks safer somehow than the way Sandman fell off that ladder before. Credible with the That's Incredible on Carino. Francine hits the Coochie Con Rana on the outside. I didn't even know she did that. They bring in a giant ladder, and then the belt goes up a couple of feet. And I was wondering about that because Joey Styles played it off like, who's the puppet master? Who's controlling the belt? I was wondering, like, is this supposed to be a reference? Like, is some puppet master at play moving the belt around like a la, you know, King of the Ring 99 with Steve Austin versus the McMahons? Or is this just them moving the belt up a little higher because the ladder is now taller than where the belt is? I don't know. It was never fully explained. Credible drives Carino off the ladder onto a table. I feel like Credible got a lot of that landing more than Carino did. I feel like Credible hurt more from that. Sandman climbs a giant ladder to grab the championship and is now a 4-time ECW World Champion. I'm going to give this one 2 stars out of 4. Like I said, this was basically one spot done over and over again. How many times can you get someone to fall off a ladder through a table, namely Sandman? Carino and Credible got their licks into, but it was mostly Sandman who got punished here. But Carino and Credible, they show respect to Sandman after the match. They all shake hands, but then the Baldys run back in and beat them up out of the arena. Rhino comes in, slips a chair next to him, almost fucks this whole thing up, but he recovers and gores the Sandman. He gets on the microphone, but that would have been dreadful because you see him rearing up for it, and then like you go, whoop, right away, first step, he almost fucks it up. So he's able to recover, so good for him. He gets on the microphone, he complains he's a TV champion in a company that has no TV deal. He threatens to kill Sandman's family if Sandman does not grant him a title shot right then and there. Holy shit, how often do you hear that kind of threat being lobbed in wrestling today? Sandman responds in the affirmative.
Ring the fucking bell!
And so we get the ECW Championship defender right away. Sandman against Rhino. Rhino hits a gore and a pile driver onto the floor through a table. Back in the ring, Sandman somehow kicks out. What? One more pile driver in the ring. Rhino wins and becomes a dual champion. He is the company's final world and television champion. I'm going to give him 1.5 star because, again, it was just, you know, such a quick match. I can't believe Sandman kicked out of the pile driver, off the apron, through a table on the floor. That's ridiculous. So the extra one was just kind of a bonus, basically. Cyrus challenges anyone to face off with Rhino right now. Rob Van Dam, the not surprise, comes out. The person they said who would not show up actually did. What a shock. So RVD making his first appearance in ECW in several months now. The surprise guest, he wants to challenge Rhino for the title, but then Jerry Lynn interrupts, and Mr. I Will Only Wrestle in the Main Event has his main event match right here and now against RVD. How very ECW that RVD would be in the main event in the final pay-per-view of the company's existence, but doesn't get a challenge for the World Championship. Of course, these two had a classic rivalry in ECW a couple years before this that was considered one of their finest, one of the best rivalries in late 90s wrestling when it was RVD and Jerry Lynn. That rivalry especially made Jerry Lynn, more so than RVD, but really made both of them kind of household names. As I'm going on and watching this, it's a great match by most standards, but unfortunately does not quite live up to what these guys did in 99, unfortunately. If you watch like that stuff from then and then watch it now, it's like something is off here, unfortunately. RVD goes for a rolling monkey flip, but JL catches him with a big forearm. An asshole chant emerges, and Joey Styles on commentary thinks they're talking about Lynn or Cyrus, but it sounds more they're chanting at the bald fan who was trying to get all in the guy's business when they were fighting in his corner. That's what led to the hit the bald guy chant from about a minute earlier.
Original ECW fans, and even if you were in the crowd, original ECW fans can be savage. Just purely savage. And, you know, you heard earlier they were calling a girl a crack horse, so hey, savage.
We get another "you fucked up" chant from the crowd, this time when Lynn kind of messes up the schoolboy pin on RVD. That is a chant I am not sad to see gone today for the most part. Like, I'm sure it exists in some pockets of wrestling. But yeah, as someone who's been in the ring, like if I screwed up plenty when I wrestled, but the last thing I would have wanted is for the fans to also chant "you fucked up" at me. Like, that's the last thing I would have needed. And, from a fan perspective, I could see that being kind of a fun thing to join in and be a part of the show in that way. But as that does to me, it's just in general on both sides. I think, that chant's not very nice. RVD goes for a rolling thunder kind of move again onto a chair, but Lynn gets out of the way, does a crazy flippy dippy sunset flip powerbomb to RVD off the corner. Back of his head hits the chair, which must have hurt. He spikes RVD with a big DDT. Yes. Cyrus gets into the ring to do more damage, but out comes Joel Gertner, whose head is all taped up from the beginning of the show. It looks kind of ridiculous. Looks like he's wearing a weird hat. And he DDTs Cyrus to a huge pop. RVD hits Lynn with the Van Daminator. I mean, Jerry, how often did you fight RVD over the years? You know not to hold a chair when you're around Rob Van Dam. But now here's the thing. Who's going to help Rob with the Van Terminator? There's no Bill Alfonso there, so who's going to hold up the chair for RVD? Why, Joel Gertner, of course. He'll help out. It's the move that Shane McMahon would invent 3 months later at WrestleMania 17. The Van Terminator. Right into the mush of Jerry Lynn. RVD wins the match. I'm going to give this one 3 stars out of 4. It was a very fitting way to end the last pay-per-view of ECW. Little botchy at times. I think that's just kind of comes to the territory of an RVD match. Sometimes he can get a little out of hand. It's a send-off that ECW deserves. Again, not to the caliber of what we saw from RVD and Lynn in their prime of the rivalry, but this is still a very good match and probably objectively one of the better matches of the entire show. We do get one final backstage segment to close out the pay-per-view where Justin Credible and Steve Corino announce the formation of the new Impact players. Boy, that word "new" just guarantees success, doesn't it, in wrestling? They do the classic Impact players pose and the show closes out. Unfortunately, we never got to see what they would do as a tag team, but even if ECW didn't close just weeks after this event, we wouldn't know anyway because both guys were out of the company by February. Literally the day after this show, Steve Corino left the company because he wasn't getting paid. And so he signed a contract with WCW because of his close ties with Dusty Rhodes, because those two feuded for a while in ECW before this. So he gets signed to WCW. He's supposed to debut at the Sin pay-per-view apparently 2 months or so before WCW officially closes, but that debut never happens. So he's under contract, never on TV in WCW. When the World Wrestling Federation buys out WCW, they release him from his contract. So Corino, he would come back years later as a trainer or as kind of a guest trainer for the Performance Center, but no, he would never got a chance to actually wrestle for the WWF. And meanwhile, Justin Credible would return to the Federation in February of that year, teaming up with X-Pac and forming X Factor and all that stuff. So he wasn't long for ECW. He did not stick around for the end of ECW either.
I believe Steve Corino is still a head trainer in WWE. I could be wrong. But I know he's training. He's paid his dues. I mean, he had a heck of a legendary feud with Dusty Rhodes in ECWs, and that was a pretty cool thing. His whole shtick was he was the king of old school, but then he kept saying, I'm the king of old school. I'm a modern day, real wrestler. No one can come after me. And Dusty Rhodes is like, well, if you will, please, I'll take you on. So R.I.P. Dusty Rhodes. But yeah, they had a pretty good Pretty good match.
My final grade for ECW's Guilty as Charged 2001 is going to be a C+ grade. This was just a wild car crash of a show, full of impromptu matchups, crazy pre and post match.
So I'm gonna point this out, and I'm not going on a rant, and it's not against Brian. It's just I want to give my opinion. So every time Brian reviews these shows, he gives out pros and cons, and he has every right to do so, as he does with his reviews of ratings, because he has experience in the ring, which is fair, and he's entitled to his opinion, and I think he has a right to be a little more critical of things because he has experience. I, as a fan, I don't have that far of a right to tell a wrestler to their face, you did this move, you did that move, but why don't you do this next time? Because that wrestler's going to turn around and look at me and go, oh, you think you're going to tell me how to do my job? Why don't you get in the ring and do it? So yeah, I like to hear his perspective and learn from his perspective as a wrestler. And I've even met local guys in my city and other independent promotions that have come through and talked about from a wrestler's perspective about things, and you learn things, but you should never consider yourself so knowledgeable, I can do this. No, it's not for everybody. And it's the same thing when you're a sports fan. There's nothing wrong with having your opinion on your team or saying that you don't like this team or that team, so you kind of know what to expect. But if you were to call up the coach of your favorite football or basketball team and say, that play that you did was pretty shitty, I can do a better job, he's going to tell you, first of all, quit calling the office. And number two, if you think it's so much better, you do it. You're going to back away. So, yeah, I just like his opinion because it's interesting coming from him because he has experience. And if you put that in perspective from an experienced person's point of view, it makes you think, okay, I get what you're saying. And maybe it'll inspire you to go in and train. Maybe it'll inspire you to know when to be critical in one way and when to be critical in another way. But let's look here. His pros. He says the tag title match. I'll agree with that. Dreamer versus Anderson. Yes. Three-way tag match. Yes. RVD and Jerry Lynn. Yes. Those two, like a good feud, have great chemistry. Cons. Too many nothing matches. Well, we saw quite a bit of those, so I'll agree with him there. Nova versus Hemrick goes off the rails. Yes. And car crash booking run amok. Yeah. Pretty much.
Beatdowns and a lot of high spots and not a ton of psychology. There were a few matches that delivered. The I Quit match with the Dreamer and Anderson, RVD and Jerry Lynn, both of the tag matches that actually went somewhere, the tag title match and the triangle, the three-way dance, those were fine. But then there was the opening match with Cyrus and Jerry Lynn and Matthews and York. Nova and Hamrick was kind of a clusterfuck near the end. That kind of took me out of it. Just too much car crash booking overall in this show. And I've said before that it's nice to have some unpredictability when you have a wrestling show. The kind of feeling that anything can happen. But there is, I think, you do that to an extent, and then beyond that, like what you had in this show, it just looks like things are being booked on the fly as the show is going on, and it leaves you just kind of confused. Wait, what's happening? What's going on? And so yeah, unpredictability can be a good thing. I've said for a long time that's the one thing that WWE could use right now in their booking. But yeah, when you have a show like this, the complete opposite end of the spectrum, to me, it's a little too much of that. And this is not going to count toward the overall grade of the show because it's not really fair, but my personal grudge with this show was just the network editing and how badly they messed up a lot of the crowd reactions and sounds with all those network dubs and all the stuff. They couldn't play a lot of that music because it was licensed and copyright. They didn't have the copyright to that. So yeah, I get why it's dubbed in the network, but really, if you just look at one of the biggest examples of how that messes things up is when you see the audience react to RVD's music being played, Walk by Pantera. You see them explode, but the audience noise is so muted and it does not capture that feeling at all. And that pissed me off watching that. That was something persistent throughout the entire show. So mere weeks after this,
Just want to point out, big nerd here, me and my big brain, big busy brain. Uh, RVD did come out to Pantera's Walk, but he came out to a cover version by a band called Kilgore, and I'm actually gonna try and find that and upload it to my various, in some form or fashion, various social media posts I have. Which, by the way, if you want to find me anywhere and everywhere, whatever floats your boat, you can find me at, and the link will be in the description here, but you can find me at allmylinks.com/Joseph Brimstone. Joseph Brimstone is just another internet name that I have. I take inspiration from Mick Foley. I am Adam Trischuk, but I'm also this person, that person, the other person. All around, I'm entertaining. So I find different ways to be entertaining under different names, and I make it work. I may sound like a crazy person saying that, but I don't care. Mick Foley was crazy when he did his things, but he got over. So hey, if I can get over in the YouTube space, I'm doing something right, no matter what my name is. So, to continue.
ECW in February would cancel their March pay-per-view Living Dangerously, and then in April of 2001, ECW would officially close their doors and declare bankruptcy. About a week or a week and a half before that, though, Paul Heyman would show up on WWF TV on Raw is War doing color commentary alongside Jim Ross in place of Jerry Lawler. So that's when a lot of ECW people realized the writing was on the wall and the company was going under. Apparently, one of the reasons Heyman apparently stayed quiet and was a ghost for so long at the end of ECW was because he had stayed quiet about the bankruptcy because he wanted to make sure his guys got paid and that their checks weren't recalled by creditors after that 90-day period. That's why he stayed quiet. According to him, I don't think every wrestler got that treatment, but that was his story. ECW owed nearly $9 million in unpaid bills for things like salaries, TV deals, merchandise. It balances out to more like $7 million when you factor in the money that In Demand pay-per-view technically owed ECW, but they wouldn't pay them because they knew they were going out of business. So yeah, they owed at least $500,000 to almost 40 workers, including, and these are the numbers I looked up, $150,000 for RVD, $100,000 for Dreamer, $50,000 for Joey Styles, $50,000 for Rhino, and so on and so forth. How some of these people either stuck around like Rhino and Styles and Dreamer or came back like RVD, how they did that is mind-boggling to me. According to the bankruptcy filings, they also owed almost $600,000 to WWE, so it wasn't some benevolent gift that the Federation had given ECW in the 90s. It was more kind of like a loan, basically. It was a debt. But Heyman did get the last laugh because he basically tricked the company into paying off his debts in bankruptcy court, so I think Heyman turned out okay as a result of that. But yeah, that was ECW. Too small to be big, too big to be small. The show ends not with a bang, not with a whimper necessarily, but definitely just like a wild show that was very emblematic of what ECW was about. There was some good, but there was also just kind of some stuff that was forgettable. Well, that's going to do it for my review of Guilty as Charged 2001. Thanks once again to Jeffrey Pridemore on Patreon for nominating this show for me to review. If you want to play a role in determining what classic shows I review in the future, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the chance to nominate shows for me to review in the future. Next time on the Classic Pay-Per-View Review, well, folks, it's Money in the Bank season, as they say. We're getting closer to that big show happening in a few weeks in Chicago, so I figure it's only fitting to finally review, easily, unquestionably, my most nominated pay-per-view since I began this whole segment. It's Money in the Bank 2011. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
And I have
that. Reasons to ditch your grocery store body wash. Dr. Squatch soaps are made with ingredients that you actually find in nature.
I looked up those products just one time. One time, and the algorithm decides, I'm going to advertise that to you. It is what it is. I'm going to get YouTube Premium eventually. And who knows, maybe Dr. Squash will sponsor me someday. I don't know. I mean, hey, I used to not get advertised by them after I looked up their product when they were advertising for the Super Bowl a couple years ago. But then I just remembered their product, so I looked it up, And then the algorithm again has decided, better advertise that. Yeah, it is what it is. You gotta look at some things and laugh. Not too loud, especially here in an apartment. Anyway, now we're gonna go on to, as promised, WCW's Sin review on the same channel, Wrestling with Regret. But I want to say something here. For those of you that know, there was something that happened on this show that I feel shouldn't have happened. And whoever was in charge, I hope that they were liable for it in some form or fashion. It should have never happened. And it's and just going back and watching the footage, it's like, But for those of you who are not in the know, and maybe you're not a big wrestling fan, or you used to be, you're gonna find out, and I will give you my thoughts on it for sure. But boy, it shouldn't have happened. Look amazing that he's currently these fans.
Well, folks, this month I wanted to try something a little bit different with the classic pay-per-view reviews. Now, normally I jump back and forth on the timeline from company to company with little rhyme or reason. But this time I wanted to do something special. I wanted to do a special trilogy highlighting the beginning of the end of World Championship Wrestling. We're doing the final 3 pay-per-views of the company's existence from Q1 of 2001, beginning with WCW Sin, aka Sin Sunday, from January 14th at the Conseco Fieldhouse, now the Bankers Light Fieldhouse, in Indianapolis, Indiana. This show was nominated by Amber Wilborn, John Feuerhelm, and Mike Ryan over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. 6,600 people in the Conseco Fieldhouse in a building that seats 17,000 for basketball, by the way. 80,000 pay-per-view buys, which is down from the previous January's sold-out pay-per-view at 115,000. This one gets a 0.17 buy rate. Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson are on commentary. Speaking of commentary, one thing I really appreciate about this show, and just like the product overall at this point, is there's a big change from like the mid-2000s where they're really dialing back the use of insider terms and like pulling back the curtain and trying to do all this expose. Ooh, this is the real thing you're not supposed to know about. Like, you're not hearing the announcers going, what's a shoot? What's a work every segment? There's no Mark Madden to go, well, this wasn't in the script that I got, Schiavone. Like, there's none of that. It's all really dialed back, if not completely eliminated, from the Vince Russo era from the previous year. His influence on that kind of verbiage is more or less gone. There's still a little bit of that here and there in small pockets, but it's not really a big deal. They kind of give wrestling that mystique again. It's not a perfect product by any means, WCW, but you can tell they're trying to right some of the wrongs from that era, and I do appreciate that.
For those of you who know, you know what I'm about to say. For those of you who don't, Vince Russo is a pretty controversial figure in the professional wrestling fandom. He's a controversial topic. He's a controversial individual. Some people like him, some people don't. Whether it's fans, whether it's certain wrestlers, certain individuals. But I'm not going to lie, I do have footage saved in playlists on his opinion, countered with someone else's opinion, just to make it interesting. So yeah, if you're any of those fans, or if you don't want to hear it, you don't have to click on the video. But yeah, he's pretty controversial. So, and looks like we start with what I loved about WCW was the cruiserweight division. Like, growing up, like, I would learn later in my adult years and even my teenage years where a lot of the wrestlers came from. Maybe they came from Mexico, maybe they came from Japan, or they've been working on the independent circuit. But the cruiserweight division, and even I'll go back in my own spare time and watch these matches, and holy moly, just, they still hold up today. They're awesome to watch. Just the flips, the dives, and just how grounded it is. I mean, you see guys flipping and diving these days, but it just seems like it's so fast. It's like you have to catch your breath here. It's like catch your breath, and they just make you do something that goes, whoa! So yeah, I kind of miss that slow but unreal pace. Like, don't get me wrong, seeing guys who flip and dive, that's exciting to watch. But a lot of times, I, as a person who's in the audience, I see all these flips and dives and all that jazz, and I'm just like, let me catch my breath, and I'm winded for the rest of the show because how do you follow that? But, anyways.
Your opening match is for the Cruiserweight Championship as Chavo Guerrero defends against Shane Helms. It's his first singles match on pay-per-view. At Starrcade, Shane and Shannon Moore won a title shot in a triple threat tag team ladder match. They've been fighting Chavo for the belt on and off all month. It's Shane's turn once again. Meanwhile, Chavo is separated from the Misfits in action, and it's immediately paid dividends, becoming the Cruiserweight Champion on an episode of Thunder last month. The action starts out fast, some good athleticism by both guys here. Shane on top early, but Chavo with a big spine buster and a low blow to take control. Big sequence of counters leads to an atomic drop and a neck breaker by Helms, and they're both down. Shane with the X-Plex on Chavo and a close 2 count. Shane dumped to the outside. Chavo with a big dive onto him. Shane kicks out and gets his own dive to the outside. Kind of a frog splash meets cross body, which is pretty cool. Yes. Then a diving sunset flip in the ring and a kick out. Chavo blocks the vertebreaker, but he takes the Nightmare on Helm Street, sick name by the way, and Chavo kicks out. Shane goes to the Nightmare one more time, but Chavo ultimately reverses it into a brainbuster to win and retain. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Great opening match here. I love that Chavo can have a great match with just about anybody. Not saying that Shane's bad here, because he's definitely not, but the pattern that I've picked up on is that almost every Chavo match I've seen and covered for the Classic Review segment has been good to great. He's just a really solid, well-rounded worker who can work well with anybody. And what I love about this match in particular, there's no MIA bullshit, there's no 3 count, shenanigans, just a good, clean opening match that's really well done. Backstage, Mike Tenay checks his watch as he waits for the CEO of WCW, Ric Flair. So who's the mystery man joining the world title match later on? Flair's keeping quiet, but he says he will rock Steiner's world to the foundation.
Woo! It's a given. When you see Ric Flair, whether you know him for wrestling or otherwise, you can't help but say, woo! Because that's what Ric Flair's known for. It's just a given. And one more time for good measure. Woo!
Elsewhere backstage, Mean Gene with the reunited Mama Lukes. Big Vito facing his brother Reno, and Johnny the Bull's been barred from ringside.
Whatever.
Vito says it doesn't matter what Reno throws at him, he's still a winner and will come out on top tonight. We go to that match now as Big Vito takes on Reno of the Natural Born Thrillers. We discover throughout this build that he's actually Vito's younger brother in kayfabe. They've been feuding for months at this point, but they find a common enemy in Chronic who's been paid by some mysterious benefactor to beat both of them up. So they team up at Starrcade, but swerve, Reno paid off Chronic all along, including to beat him up just to keep the ruse going. I hate those kind of storylines where it's like, hey, I'm gonna make you beat me up to make it look good when I ultimately turn on the other guy that you're also beating up. I hate those storylines. Anyway, another X factor in this matchup or in this feud has been the involvement of a woman named Marie, who is Vito and Reno's kayfabe sister who's been trying to keep the family together. But I'm very confused by her involvement in this and what her actual role is and where the brothers lay here. Because first it's implied that Reno and Marie are dating, and then we find out they're all siblings here, so there's none of that awkwardness. And then we've got this pre-match promo with Vito, though, where he says, oh, you did this to me, you did that to me, you stole my girl. Well, is he talking about like a girl like in the past, some general girl we don't know about? Or is he referring to Marie? It's so confusing here. Reno with a hot start, but Vito with some fight, hitting a big superplex. He goes for a charge, but he throws his shoulder into the ring post. They brawl on the outside, and as Reno works over Vito, the commentary cannot stop talking about this family feud, the brother versus brother thing. They almost dwell on it more than the WWF did with Undertaker and Kane. Vito with a big boot that leads to a double down. Vito comes back, hits the flying elbow drop, but Reno kicks out. Reno with some kind of standing dropkick to the upper body area, maybe? Signals for roll the dice, but Vito blocks it, turns into a slugfest. Vito goes for a suplex, but Reno counters out perfectly into roll the dice to win. I think it was, a pretty basic match, but it was well executed. I liked the story they were telling, and the finish is pretty cool as well. The counter into the roll of the dice finisher, which, by the way, the announcers hail as like the second coming of finishers. Like they're really putting over Reno as like the future, and his finisher is the move to beat. And it's like, it's just funny. Not even a couple years later, you don't really hear about Reno. But we'll talk more about the future and what happens in WCW and with Reno as these reviews go on.
Just want to bring it up that the Vito individual you saw, this is where he got his big break. He had wrestled, on the independent circuit and what was left of the territory system in the mid 90s. But he did eventually have a career in the WWE as the toughest man to ever wear a dress. I'm not kidding. That was the gimmick they gave him. That was a character they gave him. And how he got fired, he didn't get fired for not doing his job. He didn't get fired for drug violations or anything like that. He posed for Playgirl, did an interview. WWE didn't like it, and they said, pack your bags and leave. I don't work in a corporate company. I don't know why that they were upset at the time. But yeah, that's, if you're wondering what happened and why Vito disappeared, that's why. Continue.
Commissioner Mike Sanders backstage with Brian Adams of Chronic. He bribes him to take care of his match with Ernest Miller coming up. Then in walks Brian Clark, who says he found a job that paid better. By the way, at this point in the timeline, Chronic has gone full APA in terms of just nicking the mercenary gimmick that Bradshaw and Farouk were doing. It's the exact same thing here. APA is about beer, Chronic's about weed. I mean, the comparisons, they're definitely there between these two teams. It's time for...
And even though Chronic was called Chronic and they would come out to like green lights and they had these, lines that went down and they had these kind of stars that looked like weed leaves. They were in WCW, which, if you don't know, WCW was owned by the Turner Network, which is owned by Ted Turner, who owns CNN as well and owned TBS, which is still around today, which has AEW going on now. So, yeah. Even though, Chronic, but it was like it could mean two things. It could mean weed or it could mean chronic pain. But even if they did that, apparently, according to a lot of wrestlers in shoot interviews that I've watched, that company would change the book just constantly on them about what they can and can't say, what is subtle but it isn't subtle reference. And best example I could give you is traditionally in wrestling, if a wrestler grabs something that they're not supposed to in a match, like a chair or a table, and it's not a chair match, it's not a table match, it's not a hardcore match, the announcer would say, he's grabbing a foreign object. Well, Turner's people didn't like the word foreign, so they said, call it an illegal object. And then eventually I think they changed it to just call it, just say chair or just say table. Or elaborate a little bit and say, it's a chair and you shouldn't have that because it's an illegal object. Corporate world. It can be very, very confusing.
For a bonus cruiserweight match as the Young Dragons, that's Yang and Kaz Hayashi, take on Evan Courageous and Jamie Noble. Noble's the former third member of the Young Dragons who is wearing the mask as Jamie-san. He's now unmasked and has teamed up with Courageous, who was part of 3 Count earlier until he went on his own. The match begins hot with the Dragons, a pretty double Asai moonsault onto their opponents on the outside. Some good cruiserweight work with Yang and Noble. They tumble to the outside. Kaz goes flying, but Courageous intercepts him with a drop kick. Noble Noble and Courageous working over Kaz for a long time. A lot of K names in this match. Cool press slam into a spinebuster by Courageous.
Nice.
He slips on a springboard moonsault, but he's able to save himself and make the move work. Kaz rolls out of a sunset flip and kicks Jamie's head off. Yang with the hot tag, and he's all over his opponents. Evan with a big springboard to Hayashi. A big-ass powerbomb off the top by Yang, but the pinfall is broken up. Evan with a perfect 450, but that's also broken up. Another broken pinfall after a big tombstone by Noble. Yang misses the Phoenix Splash, but he rolls up Noble with a small package to win. Noble and Courageous jump the Dragons a little after the match, and that's that. I also give this one 4 stars out of 5. It's a really fun match, and it's a really good kind of preview into what the future of wrestling is beginning to look like. A more embracing of that high-flying, high-impact cruiserweight style being kind of normalized as we see like in today's wrestling, for example. Scott Hudson on commentary repeatedly referring to these guys as the future of wrestling, as part of WCW's new era. Well, he was off base about the second part of that statement, but as far as the future of the business, he was definitely on point.
Yes.
Backstage, a purple hot rod pulls up, and like two guys climbing out of a clown car, it's Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger, totally buff. They openly conspire in front of the camera against their opponents in Goldberg and Dwayne Bruce. They have a plan B waiting as well. Ha ha ha, we are evil. In a match for the commissionership of WCW, the incumbent Mike Sanders defends against the former commissioner, Ernest the Cat Miller, and I
loved Ernest the Cat Miller. I'm still a big fan of him. I thought he was entertaining. He was really cool.
I just can't get behind Mike Sanders, folks.
Neither could I.
I'm sorry. I tried. I watched a lot of Nitro and Thunder leading up to this show. He had a lot of screen time in 2000 and 2001, for sure. I just don't see his appeal. You know, I didn't think his promos were particularly interesting. Like, he could talk well enough, but he didn't have a lot to say. I don't think he had a very unique look or unique skill set. He was certainly above average, as his nickname suggested, and he could get heat, but I felt there were a lot of other guys around this time who could get heat and do it better. For as much as they pushed Mike Sanders in WCW, I just didn't see what they saw. Back at Halloween Havoc, Sanders, who is the leader of the Natural Born Thrillers, beat the Cat for the commissionership after some help from Shane Douglas. This is the rematch. He tries to explain to the, quote, cheese whiz sucking trailer park trash in Indiana, he's not just fighting to keep his position, he's also fighting for the services of Ms. Jones, who's the Cat's valet. Oh goody, another woman is property angle. These two have some shtick early on, taking turns posing for the crowd until Sanders jumps the Cat, but he fights back. Sanders working over Cat with some old school heel tactics, but Cat fires up, fights out of a sunset flip in a colorful way before dropping the elbow to the fans' delight. Sanders begging off, but he throws Cat through the ropes to the outside. Mike grabs a chair, but Ms. Jones stops him and kicks him. Sanders is on the run as Jones chases him. With the referee distracted, in come Mark Jindrak and Sean Stasiak of the NBT with the jump on Miller, but then Chronic beat up the Thrillers. A whole lot of bullshit going on around the ring as Clark shoves Sanders' bribe back in his mouth. Miller with the big kick. He wins and regains the role of commissioner.
By the way, NBT stood for Natural Born Thrillers, which I believe was inspired to work in wrestling because of the movie Natural Born Killers. That's just my opinion. I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. So yeah, NBT. If you're wondering what it stood for, if you never watched wrestling during this time, or you're just not a wrestling fan and you're wondering, what does that mean? It stood for Natural Born Thrillers.
I give this one 2 stars out of 5. You know, I was always entertained by Ernest Miller's work as a character in WCW, whether he was a heel or a babyface later on. I think that he had the personality to make both of them work, and I thought he was very entertaining on the microphone and doing the dancing and everything. The match itself was pretty basic, but I appreciated the comeuppance for Mike Sanders in this one. So the story they told was okay. Like, Miller's in-ring stuff, like, take it or leave it, but I think his character is what shines through here.
All right, guys, we're looking for new commercial ideas to promote the Lawnmower 4.0 below-the-waist trimmer.
Moving on.
Backstage, continuity. Ric Flair showing Goldberg the footage we saw earlier of Totally Buff, totally giving away their plans in front of the camera backstage. They think that their plan B is going to be some kind of disqualification they're going to force Goldberg into, so Flair makes their match a no DQ match. Goldberg then takes some time to give a fan an autograph and a picture. Wow, what a great guy. That kid's not going to factor into the match. Mean Gene with Neff Jeff. How far will Jarrett go to win the world title tonight? Will he betray his friend Scott Steiner? Jarrett's having none of that business. He says Scott can trust him because he's got his back. I'm guessing that will not last. Well,
No.
one basic rule about WCW around this time was when you feud with Team Canada, their Canadianness just permeates everything around them, and suddenly you're in a match that's somehow Canadian themed, or a championship is themed as Canadian, and this night is no different. We have a
And I'm
penalty box
Canadian.
match, because what's more Canadian than hockey? You've got
Yep.
Team Canada, Lance Storm, Elix Skipper, and Mike Awesome versus the Filthy Animals, Kidman, Conan, and Rey Mysterio, with special guest referee, former Team Canada member Jim Duggan.
Oh.
Team Canada roll up in a whole-ass bus. Who needs the DX Express? You got this, baby. The 70s bus that Mike Awesome drove around has been given a new coat of paint to reflect Mike's new Canadian allegiance. The
Yeah.
Filthy Animals show up, and Conan's just straight up wearing Christian's old sunglasses.
Basically.
Duggan, like I mentioned, who was briefly a member of Team Canada because he wanted to sell his soul for one more run, says he'll call this match down the middle tough guy, and he explains the rules of how this match works. Basically, if you're caught breaking a rule, you will go into the penalty box outside the ring for a minute, and a power play is invoked there. Early on, Skipper with some illegal offense, he goes into the penalty box. Then Awesome gently grazes Duggan with his shoulder, and he's thrown in there as well. Suddenly, it's 3-on-1 on Storm for the next minute. Lots of starting and stopping as this match goes on. The guys get out of the penalty box, but right after that, Awesome and Storm go in the box, so it's 3-1 against Skipper. Elix looks good in this match, though. I love how he bends backwards to duck a clothesline, but then he sets himself up for a reverse DDT. Kidman and Rey get penalty box when Duggan catches them working illegally. Outside, Tigress attacks Major Guns. Oh no, not water on this bikini, anything but that. Duggan puts them both in the box. These folks are in the box a lot longer now than they were previously. There's no consistency as to how long these guys are in and out of the box. Storm almost spikes himself on a K-Dog facebuster as both sides are back at full strength. Kidman with a hot tag and a House of Fire. Skipper, Awesome, and Conan are all penalized for various transgressions. A Bronco Buster from Rey to Storm. Tigress with one of her own, and she gets boxed. At this point, why is anyone acting surprised they're being punished? Duggan's been pretty consistent tonight.
Yep.
Blind tag by Kidman hits the Kid Crusher on Storm, but the pinfall is barely broken up in time. Mike with the Awesome Bomb on Rey, but neither man is legal. As Duggan checks on them, Storm with the Maple Leaf on Kidman. Kidman taps, Duggan finally rings the bell, and this match is over.
If you're wondering when he said Rey or Rey Mysterio, and you're going, wait a minute, where's his mask? From early 1999 to the end of WCW in March of 2001, Rey Mysterio wrestled unmasked. So if you're one of those people who watch wrestling periodically and you're kind of getting back into it because you see Rey Mysterio and you remember him and he's wearing a mask in WWE, well, at one point he didn't wear a mask. So you know what? If you want to see what he looked like, you can always look up any images of him unmasked on the internet. But if you want a good one, like in action unmasked, just watch my video here, go back, or watch this video, go back, look at it and go, oh, that's what he looks like. So yeah, and another thing I mentioned, yes, I'm Canadian. Sometimes Canadians, I don't know what it is in wrestling, but sometimes we're treated as heels. And just being like very pro-Canadian and stuff. I don't know where it got started. I think it was the Hart Foundation, to be honest. Like the group that Bret Hart was in late '97 with his late brother Owen Hart, Brian Pillman, David Boy Smith, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. They were all related to the Hart family at one point, and yeah, they just would say, you know, screw USA and all that. I'm pretty sure that's where it starts, so that's why. But yeah, we usually when a Canadian like heel group is doing something, there's always a gimmick kind of a match going on. And in all honesty, this match here, this penalty box match, it breaks my brain. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not going to judge what a wrestler does in his ring, but whoever comes up with the ideas for matches that have like a theme to them, all I ask is don't break my brain. Don't make me have to keep track of things. Like guys are in there for a minute, but there's no timer. So, and then there's power plays involved where people can be involved. I'm like, I mean, I shouldn't take wrestling too seriously, but at the same time, it's kind of breaking my brain. Like, am I supposed to keep score? Am I supposed to keep time? Like, what the hell's going on? So yeah, like when it comes to matches like that, any match that has a special thing, just don't break my brain. Make it as easy as possible and then entertain me. That's all I say.
The most I can give this one is 2.5 stars out of 5. This match was at times kind of hard to get through, even though the action in the ring was fine. The rules aren't the problem in this match. I don't believe the gimmick match itself in theory is the problem, but I think there was just way too much, like, again, starting and stopping, you go in the box, you come out of the box, you go in the box. It was very difficult to keep track of at times what was going on. I think Jim Duggan as a referee was really overshadowing a lot of what was going on in the ring. The power plays didn't really factor into the match at all. Like the 3-on-1 advantages like you had against Team Canada twice really had no factor in this thing at all. And so, I think it's an idea that has legs, but this particular instance, I don't think was done as well as it could have been. Backstage, Mike Tenay flipping Mike Sanders some shit for losing against the Cat earlier. Sanders says Chronic made the biggest mistake of their lives and it's not over with him and the Cat. He tells his boys Palumbo and O'Hare to get those tag titles. Chuck Palumbo saying 5 years from now, the natural born thrillers will own this business. Oh dear. Sean O'Hare yells into the mic and Tenay calls him a real sicko and almost calls the Insiders the Outsiders.
The World Tag Team titles will be at stake when the Insiders defend.
Oh, slip up there. I just want to point out Sean O'Hare, they mentioned there. He's no longer with us. He passed away in 2004 of suicide, but damn, I remember him quite well. He could go. I loved his stuff. I loved seeing him perform. I wish that he got better, more known, and had a lengthier career, and was used more. Like, see more of him on television, in my opinion. And maybe he would still be with us. I don't know. But yeah, he was awesome. And I'll be honest, I liked his version of doing the Swanton Bomb as opposed to how Jeff Hardy would do it. I don't know. I just looked at Sean O'Hare's and I thought, that guy can fly. I've seen Jeff Hardy do it, but this guy can fly. From a fan's perspective, that was cool. So yeah, I kind of miss Sean O'Hare. He's one of my favorites that didn't get too big, but I remember him quite well.
Well, they call it a three-way dance with the Hardcore Championship, but really it's a triple threat. There's a difference.
Yes.
As Terry Funk defends against Crowbar and the Man Called Ming. At Starrcade, Terry Funk gave Crowbar a whole lot of brain damage in their match at the Hardcore Championship. Suddenly, Meng has made his intentions known of wanting the belt, even going so far as to steal it from Funk after beating up both the guys on TV. In this match here, as Funk makes his way to the ring, Daphne's in the crowd and throws a drink at him, prompting him to pull her onto the ramp. Crowbar shows up from out of nowhere and dinks Funk with a chair repeatedly. So many chair shots to the head. Boy. They're fighting their way into the ladies' room. Garbage flies everywhere. The Man Called Ming finally shows up and starts throwing weapons around. They make their way back to the arena, then to the back again. Funk with a flying trash can right into Meng's face. Crowbar and Funk stack tables onto Meng, stack him to the heavens. Fighting in the arena again, Bar puts Funk on a table, hit the big leg drop off the seating area through it. Meng comes back and suddenly the gain on the camera is too high. Technical joke there. Crowbar and Meng fight on the stage and the ramp. Funk attacks with a shovel and Meng begins to deflate. Funk slams Bar onto the barricade and bends it in half. Scott Hudson talking about how the brain cells being lost in this match. Don't remind us, Scott.
Yeah.
Crowbar attacking Funk's knee with a chair. Crowbar with a figure four, but in comes Meng, who goes flying into Crowbar. Another splash by Meng, but Crowbar breaks up the fall. Funk and Bar repeatedly bludgeon Meng with chairs, but they fight over who's pinning him. Funk wants Crowbar to help him, but Crowbar turns on Funk. Meng kicks Crowbar. Meng with a Tongan death grip on Funk to officially win the championship. This one gets 2 stars out of 5 for me. So many chair shots to the head, my lord. Now, I normally try and detach myself from the 2020 mindset when going back on the older shows. I try and take that part out of the equation, but even with that, trying to take the modern sensibilities of brain damage out of it, it's hard to watch all those chair shots, honestly. Not quite as bad as the Starrcade match, because Crowbar was actually handcuffed as he's taking all those hits. But yeah, this one was kind of a big sloppy brawl with some occasional wrestling moves thrown in for good measure. But the best part about this match, folks, is that 1 week later, Meng is gone. The Hardcore Champion leaves the company high and dry, goes back to the World Wrestling Federation, and re-debuts in the Royal Rumble match. So that was totally worth it. Backstage, Ric Flair congratulates Cat on regaining the commissionership, tells him to take the night off.
I think he actually took the belt with him too. I could be wrong. But yeah, you never saw the hardcore title defended anymore after that. So yeah, as far as I remember. And yeah, I agree with him. It's hard to watch, even with ECW. It's hard to watch guys getting smashed in the head with a chair, given now what we know about CTE, especially in the West world after the Chris Benoit incident. So yeah, it's hard to watch, but I mean, it's the same thing with anyone who's a football fan or anyone who's a fan of any sport. You know, you go back and you watch it and you don't think the same. You're just like, oh man, those brains are getting rattled. So yeah.
Elsewhere, Mean Gene interviewing Sid Squid. Nice hat there. He talks about his chances in the four-way ladder tonight. Sid whispers he is the original madman of WCW, and he will chokeslam everyone straight to censored. Who the fuck censors hell? Tag Team Championship match up next as the Insiders. DDP and Kevin Nash take on the Natural Born Thrillers. After Nash was betrayed by the NBT in the fall, he joined forces with a returning DDP. The Vegas Connection reunited. They called themselves the Insiders to play on the Outsiders name with Nash and Hall, and also the fact they're both very cozy, with management. They have the inside track on that. These are the baby faces, by the way. Mike Sanders took the belts from them back in December and awarded them to the Perfect Event, but weeks later, Nash and DDP regained them at Starrcade. A tag team battle royal took place on TV to see who would take on the champions. The final four men were members of the Natural Born Thrillers, which prompted then Commissioner Sanders to declare that all four of them were eligible to challenge for the belts. We get Palumbo and O'Hare at first, then out come the rest of the Thrillers. Sanders, who by the way is not the commissioner anymore, declares a freebird rule on steroids in which any member can make a substitution during the match. When Ric Flair shows up with security and tells the non-participants to kick rocks or they're fined and suspended. DDP starts out strong against Palumbo. Nash and O'Hare tag in. O'Hare looking very agile against Big Sexy, kicks him in the head. Page gets in the ring again when he gets cut off. Palumbo ducks a punch and counters with a tombstone, which is impressive, but Page reverses it and hits it himself. Okay, well that's why he got buried by The Undertaker later that year. Nash with the hot tag when Sean Stasiak runs in, then in sneaks Lex Luger in his very large shirt. A jackknife on Palumbo, DDP goes after Luger on the outside, then Buff Bagwell in disguise attacks Nash from behind. Why? O'Hare hits the Shanton bomb and covers Nash as the announcers are screaming as this injustice goes down.
Oh boy.
He's in, but he, no! Oh, the referee didn't see Buff!
I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I thought the match was okay, but I'm getting kind of sick of all these run-ins with Natural Born.
Give those announcers an award or something. They have emotion pouring out of those voices.
Thrillers. The new champs celebrate backstage, and Mike Sanders saying even though he lost his match, there's still a lot to celebrate. Elsewhere, Ric Flair hops into his limo, says it's time. It is not time just yet.
Looking for royalty-free music? Discover Epidemic Sound. Get the safest music.
We go to a first blood chain on a pole match for the U.S. Championship as General Erection defends against the franchise Shane Douglas. Have we got enough gimmicks attached to this thing yet? So the story here is that General Erection finally won the U.S. title at Mayhem after a lengthy feud with Lance Storm. Meanwhile, Shane Douglas has been using a small chain he packs in his tights to win many of his matches. And finally, Hugh Morris has had enough. They had a defense at Starrcade, and this is the rematch. Shane on the mic before the match saying the U.S. title will be a stepping stone to the WCW title. He will walk away the champion. Why is that chain so high above the ring? It's not on a pole, and this match is not billed as a ladder match. Referee finds that Shane's packing a chain of his own. The match begins with a lot of arm work by Rection here. Shane with a reverse dick kick city, but Rection shakes it off and hits a flying clothesline. Goes to the moonsault, but Douglas hits the ropes and drops him. Starts working on Hugh's knee for a while. He runs to Rection, but he just takes his own bump over the top rope into the outside. They brawl into the crowd, and Douglas wrapping the General's leg around the ring post. Rection able to overcome that though and dinks Franchise in the head with a ladder. No blood yet. Rection climbs the ladder. He's got the chain. He's dumped off the ladder and the referee's taken out as well. Franchise with yet another chain hidden in his gear.
How many chains are there?
Rection with it. The General's bleeding and Douglas is the winner. His first singles title in WCW. I give it 3 stars out of 5. Not a bad match. The one real nitpick I have with this thing was I think the gimmicks are a bit redundant. I think you could have been fine with just a chain match or just a first blood match, and you wouldn't have to change much about the match itself. But besides that, I thought it was, a good bout, a good brawl, and the story going around the arena and everything, and the finish I thought was okay, kind of clever of Shane to do that. So yeah, it was a good match for me. But
like I said, when you do a match that has a gimmick, don't break my brain. Trying to say what that match was 10 times over, or 10 times fast, boy.
Stage, Mean Gene with the champ, Scott Steiner. I declined to make a silly rhyme with Scott's name here because I don't want him to come back and find me. Steiner says that Flair has stacked the deck against him, but Flair sets him up, he knocks him down. Elsewhere, Erection gets his cue that he's live and he gets really mad.
Yep. And go.
Love, brother, you didn't get
Up next, a tag team match in which Goldberg's career and streak are on the line. It's no DQ as Goldberg and Sarge Dwayne Bruce take on Totally Buff. That's Lex Luger and Buff Bagwell. Last month at Starrcade, Buff joined forces with Lex Luger to form Totally Buff. He's mad at WCW for holding him back. They both have it out for Goldberg, and they begin to attack Sarge Dwayne Bruce, also known as Buddy Lee Parker, also known as Braun the Leprechaun, also known as Jack Boot. Sarge was the head trainer at the power plant, which is what inspired the Performance Center of today. He trained Goldberg, so Totally Buff are trying to attack Goldberg emotionally and mentally, going after his trainer and breaking his arm. He is the weak link in all this, and they're basically doing everything they can on commentary to avoid saying that Parker's not very good. They'll say, oh, he's tough and he's a tenacious, pit bull and a drill sergeant. He's molded all these stars and everything. Oh, but he didn't win a whole lot of matches. He's not very good as a wrestler. Like everything they could to say to avoid saying that he sucks. Also, I find it very weird that they're going with this angle of we're going to attack Goldberg mentally and emotionally, when so far in this entire run for Goldberg, he has shown no weakness in that department, and this didn't really accomplish that either. Also, it bears mentioning that every match Goldberg fights for at this point is for his streak and his career. If he loses, he is banned from WCW for life. That was a storyline that was cursed upon him by Vince Russo before he left the company. That's what the company's got to deal with here. The whole story is Goldberg has to meet his original streak of 177 wins to even get a championship match, and if he loses, he's fired. He's Buffer and he's the Stuffer, and he drops that famous line of his, let's bring him out. Ooh, that's a more affordable line he does. It's only 10 grand a pop for that one. Goldberg starts strong against Luger here. Buff with a suplex, but Goldberg gets right back up. Sarge enters the ring and attacks his opponents with his injured arm. What psychology from the head trainer of the power plant, everyone. Heels work over Sarge, Buff with the chin lock. They're really putting over how helpless this tough guy is here. Goldberg goes to break up a pin, but whiffs the kick. A hot tag to Goldberg, and Luger is a run-in. I do like that pump handle fall-away slam that Goldberg does, though. Ringside, Luger accosts the Goldberg fan from earlier. Goldberg stops Luger. Then the fan maces Goldberg. It was a damn setup. He's Plan C, that evil fan you'll never hear from again after tonight. Security takes him down, but Luger says it's cool. He's with him. He hangs out for the rest of the match and doesn't do anything, which is kind of weird. Goldberg is blinded now. Luger clatters him with a steel chair. A super blockbuster by Luger and Bagwell almost ends horribly, but he hits it. That was actually pretty cool. Luger pins and beats Goldberg. Goldberg is done. We have sad fans, or they're just tired fans. I'm just glad it's over. This one gets a 1.5 stars for me. They bring in Sarge as, kind of the weak link in this matchup here, but he's kind of a non-factor in the story to begin with. In fact, it's kind of a twist how, if Goldberg were to lose, you'd think, oh, Sarge will take the fall. But Sarge has nothing to do with the finish. It has everything to do with the fan they allude to earlier in the show, Chekhov's fan. When they showed him signing the autograph with Goldberg and everything, I knew that he was going to be involved somehow in this thing. And Sarge was, kind of a non-factor. Like, I laughed when he tried to, use his arm as a weapon when he had the arm broken. Clearly not that broken, apparently. You might as well have had Goldberg in a handicap match. I think you could have accomplished everything the same, just without Sarge being involved in this thing. The announcers practically eulogize Goldberg in real time here. Talks about how he saved the company from the NWO back in 1998. Get a good look, folks. This is the last time we'll actually see Goldberg in WCW. He's taking time off after this to get shoulder surgery. And even with the power of hindsight, knowing what's going to happen to WCW in a couple of months, it's really bad timing to lose one of your top stars in Goldberg for injury. And I'm not saying that Goldberg should have stayed in it if he's hurt. I get that. But just, even, at this time period, knowing where the business is going, where WCW is headed, you need as many big names as you can get. And this was a definite gut punch WCW to lose a star as big as Goldberg this time. In your main event, Scott Steiner defends the WCW Championship against Jeff Jarrett, Sid Vicious, and a mystery opponent. Steiner won the title at Mayhem in November and has been on a tear ever since then, but CEO Ric Flair has an axe to grind, so he stacks the deck against the champ with a four-way. Sid's a man who never lost the title. Last April, he came back at Starrcade here, but Scott beat him. Jeff Jarrett is an ally of Scott's who says he's got Steiner's back, but he also wants the belt for himself. Then there's the mystery man who's been on TV for the last few weeks wearing a big baggy straitjacket and a hockey mask to conceal his identity. He's Flair's...
Definitely Rick Steiner based on gait and punches. What he means is Rick Steiner portrayed this masked man, but Rick Steiner, who's Scott Steiner's actual brother, would end up not being the masked man. And this happens a lot. There's, you look at who's the masked man? Oh, it looks like such and such. Looks like so and so. And sometimes, like I got told by several wrestlers that I've met who usually get involved in these kind of storylines, they're like, yeah, a lot of times no one knows. No one has a clear idea who's who, so we just dress up someone and when we think we're going to reach the end, we're like, oh, it was so-and-so all along. But, things could change from day to day because someone might not be available. Someone might look like just that person, so they can go in the mask. So, yeah, that happens.
Ace in the hole and to prevent basically from Jarrett and Steiner from double teaming on Sid. Speaking of Flair, he's got no time for Buffer's shit and says the mystery opponent will show up when he shows up, and the match begins right now. Sid cleans house against Steiner and Jarrett, but it becomes 2-on-1 pretty quickly. On the outside, Jarrett whips Sid, who has all day to stop before hurling himself over the barricade. Steiner decks Sid with a title belt. Sid begins to come back, but Scott cuts him off. There's more double teaming. At one point, Jarrett goes to the cover, and Scott does not appear to care. We don't get anything kind of like, oh, the tension, the dissension between these two friends, and it blows up. We don't get that. It's just a really weird point in this match where Steiner should have been upset, but he wasn't. And he's the crazy one in this match. Sid with a double suplex on the heels, and he almost drops Jarrett on his head. Sid goes after Jarrett on the outside. We cut to the back, and Flair summons the mystery man from the limo. And as that scene goes down, the TV audience is not privy to quite possibly one of the most gruesome sports injuries I've ever seen, because Sid jumps off the second rope and does kind of like a flying kick to Scott Steiner in the ring. And as he's coming down, the leg that he's landing on snaps on impact. So the tibia and the fibula both break, and the leg just bends inside the boot. It's one of the most hideous things I've ever seen. If you spent any amount of time on the internet as a wrestling fan in the last 19 years, you've probably seen this clip before. The camera cuts back and you see Sid's leg flopping around. It's really gross.
I never saw the event when it happened. I later saw it show up, and he'll mention this, but it showed up in clips on Thunder and Nitro, which were WCW's flagship programs, and you're seeing the leg just like that. Oh man! But he goes into perspective about how that happened. And yeah, this is what I was saying. So I sure hope someone was liable for it. Man, ugh.
And the real tragedy is it did not need to go down like this. Sid was pressured for months by Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, one of the road agents at the time in WCW, to do that spot off the top or second rope. And Sid always went against it because he was never comfortable with it, but he was pressured into doing it. And their logic was, well, if you do this big flying move that you've never done before, then the fans are going to go crazy for that. It's this big, huge thing. And so Sid does it. He breaks his leg. And the great irony is the live audience doesn't even see it. Like the bulk of the viewers of this show don't get to witness that moment. And in hindsight, thank God they didn't, because that would have been pretty traumatic. Oh, they didn't stop Nitro from showing it the next night, mind you, but you just couldn't see it on the pay-per-view. But yeah, that's just one of the many instances of Johnny Ace's administrative decisions going horribly just bad. Steiner is still stomping on Sid. Nobody seems to be attempting to tend to Sid. What the hell is happening? The mystery man finally saunters out to the ring. Scott Hudson with the call of the night. I think Sid's leg is broken. You think?
Yeah.
Finally, the Mystery Man stomps on Sid once, Steiner covers him, and we go the hell home. Scott retains the title. Sid is probably suffering from shock at this point. The man unmasks, and it's Road Warrior Animal, and he and Steiner hug it out in the ring as we fade to black. So, after all that craziness, what the hell just happened? As Ric Flair, the dumbest CEO alive because he let all these bad things happen under his watch, he brought in the Goldberg fan, he brought in the Mystery Man, and they all blew up in his face and caused these bad things to happen? No, it turns out in footage you don't see in this pay-per-view, it was the result of an elaborate plot by Flair and his co-conspirators. Nitro the next night opens up with this exclusive footage from backstage where they're all hugging out. Flair, Totally Buff, Scott Steiner, Animal, all these guys are in on it together. They probably would have done this like on the show proper, but it would be really weird and in poor taste to do it over the prone, broken-legged body of Sid Vicious, I'm imagining at least. So if you're watching the show live, you have no idea what happened, but on the next night on Nitro, it's all explained. So it's all a big ruse. So yeah, the Insiders losing the tag team championships, Goldberg losing his career match, and Sid losing the title match in the main event. All was by design by Ric Flair. We get a funeral for Goldberg's career the next night on Nitro, and this ultimately leads to the creation of the Magnificent Seven, which is a super heel group in WCW. At the same time, you have another large heel group in WCW, the Natural Born Thrillers. How is this all going to play out? Well, I guess I'm going to have to find out in the next few episodes of Nitro and Thunder as we head to our next pay-per-view. I give it -1 star out of 5. Now, before Sid's leg broke, the match was not great. And then when it did break, every wrong decision they possibly could have made was made in the aftermath of Sid's horrific injury, you know?
And for perspective, as I'm recording this, I was just watching a latest episode of AEW Dynamite, and there was an incident where Jon Moxley clotheslined Adam Page. And I guess Adam Page, as it was later found out, he suffered a concussion. He wasn't getting up. But the trainers and other personnel, doctors, they were in there right away because they knew something was wrong. I know in hindsight they should have done something, but man, there was no one tending to him at all. And his leg is flopping around. And I heard in a couple of interviews with Sid, he even said at one time that like he would say, you know, I feel really uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. Like, he was getting angry. Like he's like, you know, like I don't know. He was threatening to quit, and they're like, oh yeah, you can quit, but you won't get this much and stuff. So, I mean, yes, I'm sure some of you hearing this are going to say, well, you know, you're a big, tall guy, so when you work for a big company, you might as well do as you're told. Well, if I were in Sid Vicious's situation, and because of who I am, if I didn't feel comfortable doing something, and I knew I can't do that, I've never done that before, I don't want to do it, like a move that I have no training on how to do correctly and safely, being in his situation, yeah, I'd feel uncomfortable. Fire me, go ahead. I'd rather not be injured than have to go through that. And I know in wrestling, injuries can happen, but if I can prevent an injury from happening to me, happening to my opponent, because neither one of us would be coordinated to do that, or I'm not coordinated enough, or they're not coordinated enough, hey, I'll take my my pride with me out the door. And if I got to leave money on the table, I'll leave money on the table. That's my opinion.
Then they had to rush to a finish because they didn't know what to do. I felt bad, for everyone involved having to try and cover for this, because who could plan for something like this? What do you do in an instance like this? And it's not like they could just come up with a new finish on the fly, because the whole finish was dependent on Animal's betrayal of Sid. There were no other faces to betray, so you had to go through with that unless you stopped the match entirely after that, which is what I would have done in hindsight. I would have kept that going after this horrific injury and seeing his leg flopping around in the wind like that. That's absolutely reprehensible. So yeah, they probably should have stopped the match. Sid says he spent 6 years of rehab to better his leg, and he regretted that move for a long time, says he's never seen the clip, doesn't plan on seeing it. He went through a lot of depression, had a lot of anger issues he had to work through as a result of his recovery and his recuperation, but he was able to work through that and work hard through the injury. He even says at one point, in an interview I saw, like a month after the surgery, he's on a walker, he's going to the gym and doing power cleans on one leg, which sounds absolutely insane. but he was
Yes.
told he'd probably never walk or run again, but he clearly did get better. He showed up in Raw in 2012 to beat up Heath Slater, has made some sporadic indie appearances since his injury, but that is the last visual for Sid in WCW. And even though Sid was never one of my favorites, it's damn sad to see someone go out like that in that kind of horrific injury. My grade for Sin 2001 is a C-. Show was not terrible, but it wasn't great either, and
So his pros this time is Guerrero versus Helms. I agree with that. Young Dragons versus Noble and Courageous. Yep. And Rection versus Douglas. Yeah, it was, like you said, it was a good brawl, but yeah, gimmick matches don't break my brain. Cons, the penalty box match. Like I said, don't break my brain. Goldberg and Bruce versus Totally Buff. Kind of meh. World title match, yes, because of the ending and because of what happened.
grade is weighted a bit down because of how bad the main event was. Not just the quality of the match itself, but also the aftermath of Sid's injury and how they handled that. That was just a real big clusterfuck. But as usual in WCW, the mid-card got a good chance to shine here with the Cruiserweight title match and the tag team match that was added that night of the show. Some other good, okay matches, some okay mid-card matches, but sometimes like rules were inconsistent or there's too many run-ins. So, it was a mixed bag for me on this show. If the main event didn't end the way it would, I'd probably bump it up to like a C+ or something. But yeah, the injury and the way that main event went down at the end knocked it down a bit for me. If you want to play a role in determining which shows I look at, be they good, bad, or somewhere in between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the chance to nominate classic shows for me to review. But we are not done with this story yet. This is just the first chapter of the WCW in 2001 trilogy. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be looking at the second chapter, the penultimate WCW pay-per-view, Super Brawl Revenge. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.
As for me, I'm going to call it a day on this, but I want to let you guys know that with the pay-per-views, I'm going in order. So the next video we'll see is actually a review of Royal Rumble 2000 from these guys called the OSW Review. They're podcast pro wrestling fans. So you'll hear and see that. I pretty much have all the 2001 pay-per-view reviews in order of when the pay-per-views were on, all of them mostly from Wrestling with Regret. So Brian did have a review of the Royal Rumble, but I guess it got removed, copyright, who knows. He hasn't reviewed, I haven't come across anyone who's done a review that I would enjoy sharing with you on Judgment Day 2001 in May, and one of their 2 England pay-per-views, Insurrection, which I think was a little bit after WrestleMania 17, which is the epic WrestleMania. I mean, all WrestleManias are epic one way or another, but WrestleMania 17 for a lot of people is like the peak WrestleMania. It's like you gotta try and top that. So, yeah. But we will continue next time, and I'm gonna call it a day here. I will find that Kilgore video and share it around social media if I find it one way or the other. And like I said, if you want to follow me anywhere, link will be in this description here. It's allmylinks.com/Joseph Brimstone. You can keep up and be entertained one way or the other, however you see fit. So I'm just going to let this play out. And I'm calling it a day on this. So I'm just going to exit out of here. And I look down here. I've been going steady for 1 hour and 51 minutes, and I'm pretty impressed that I got this out of my system creatively. So this is always going to be the way I'm going to do it in real time. I will come up with different concepts eventually. And it's my first time, so it is what it is. But it's only going to get better from here. So have a great evening, great afternoon, great morning whenever you see this. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. And look forward to always being entertained. Bye-bye.